Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Hero Interviews. This time it's going to be Johnny Phillips, and this interview is going to be about Dungeons and Dragons in general, and mainly world building, and maybe a little bit of DM tips and tricks for those of you who are watching and want to know a little bit about what to do in certain situations or what it means to be a dungeon master. With me is Johnny Phillips. He is a longtime dungeon master. How long have you been dungeon mastering, Johnny?
Well, now I've been playing since I was 11, so it's like 39 years, going on 40. And I have DM for most of that. I've done more DMing than playing.
Uh, I can feel your pain. Uh, uh, so let's cut right to the quick. How did you get into Dungeons and Dragons?
I had a neighbor uh, lived next door, and he went to Florida to visit some relatives. And when he came back, he brought back a what was then known as the expert set. Uh, he had some family down there that played, and he brought it back, and he had us all come over, and we all went to his place, and we got in the hayloft, and we played. Uh, Took a little trip to the Isle of Dread. Don't know how many of
Ah,
you remember
the
that.
island. Oh yeah, I know
We
the
went to
island
the
dread
Isle of
very well.
Dread. We went to the pirate portion of that, and I was playing a rogue. I got to pick the lead pirate's pocket, and from that point on, I was hooked. Uh, at that point, that was all I wanted to do. It was just that kind of thing. It just had that effect. I always like to tell stories, and here was this great storytelling medium, uh, and I mean it was basically kind of like playing cops and robbers. Only when you pretended to shoot the gun, you could go, "I got you," and the other guy said, "No, you didn't. It didn't work that way anymore. You had dice that framed it." Uh,
Yeah.
and I really liked that about it. It was an imagination game. It was a storytelling game, and it was just those elements that I really enjoyed. It was the kind of thing that I wanted to do.
All
Uh,
right. Let's
like I
get a
said,
couple.
now that Christmas, my brother and I actually bought the expert set. Back then, you could buy the expert set through Sears and Roebuck through the catalog. Right
So
before the whole satanic panic nest happened,
sure.
it was easier to pick up stuff. Then after that, it was near impossible to get anything.
Let's tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, Johnny. I've known you for golly, it's almost been 15 years now, if not longer, that we've known
Has it
each
really
other.
been that long? I guess
Yeah,
it is. It's
yeah,
been a
it's been
while.
about 15 years. Um, so that's amazing, isn't it? How time passes.
Yeah, I know.
Um, so tell the viewers or listeners, whatever the case may be, a little bit about yourself and things of that nature.
Um, like I said, I am 50, soon to be 51 years old. Uh, I enjoy writing. I like to read. Um, like I said, I enjoy this game a lot. I've played several different role playing games, not just Dungeons and Dragons, and I have played every edition that has existed. I was in the very beginning when they had the horrible first edition rules, but now back then we didn't think they were horrible because they were all we had.
Yep.
Then we had something better as time went along. And with each edition, I believe they have improved the game. I really do. Uh,
So would you say that fifth edition is your favorite that's
oh
come around?
yes, uh, and as I've told several people, I believe the way that they handle the spells in fifth edition is the best they have ever done.
I
And
agree.
I generally prefer to play spell users when I'm playing fifth edition. It's just that this time I got the opportunity to do this gunslinger class. I kind of wanted to play with it, and I've gotten the opportunity to do it now, and I am really enjoying it. I got to say, it's a really fun class. There's still some, there are some issues with not having magic, but that can be got around, I'm sure, as time goes along. We've discussed some things. We just haven't put anything into effect yet. But
And
it's a good class to play.
yeah, and your character hasn't necessarily gotten himself into the situation where he can address those issues either. He's kind of been thrown right into the middle of all the stuff that's going on in the campaign. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, we do a campaign called Valorum, and he plays the gunslinger in that campaign, and he does a wonderful job against creatures that he can hit. He's devastating. I have a hard time keeping up with him. It's pretty fantastic. All right, now let's get to a little nuts and bolts of world building. When you begin to create a campaign setting or a world, what is the first thing that you gear towards? Is it a deities, or is it mechanics, a special mechanic that you like, or a continent or a landscape that you like, or a specific NPCs that you like to build? What do you aim for first when you first think about it?
Well, usually for me, the best thing, what's had the best effect, is to see what your characters are playing and what they're kind of wanting to do, uh, and then start framing your story around that. Uh, and as far as us building a world, uh, there are a lot of wonderful, wonderful resources out there that have been put out. I actually been using the Mystara world, which is the old, what they refer to now as basic D&D. Back in the old day, you had two types of Dungeons and Dragons. You had the advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and then regular Dungeons and Dragons. And now most people just refer to that regular as the basic. After the first setting that came out, the basic setting. It's just I like the world. It's easy to work with. Now, keep in mind, it's not the Wizards of the Coast Mystara. It is my Mystara. I've made major changes to it. I have added deities to it, but I still use most of it just because it saves some time. Uh, but if you're planning on creating your own world, the best advice I can give you is start small. Don't overwhelm yourself, uh, because it can get overwhelming quick. You are going to know more about your world than your players are ever going to know. You are going to spend time creating wonderful, wonderful encounters that they're never going to see because they're going to go the different way.
Hmm.
It's going to drive you up the wall. That's just part of it. I once spent days creating a encounter with a blue skinned race that lived under the sand and actually traveled within the sand. They never went to the desert. I never got
Well,
them there. They never saw that encounter. I spent all that time creating it, and they never went.
well,
It's just
the beautiful thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that the world and the story is dictated by the players. It's one of the most inclusive storytelling experiences that you can experience in any kind of medium. You and I both love tabletop games like
right,
the Call of Cthulhu board game. I forget what it's called, like Halls of Madness or something like that.
right,
Uh, uh, we like the Serenity game. Not everybody was a big fan of that, but you and I love that game. We like that, but there's not really any storytelling. We storytell in our mind and our imagination when we're playing it,
right.
but as far as the depth of character and things like that, this is this medium, the tabletop role playing game, and these mechanics really help you to develop a character that you can mold and shape around a narrative that the player has. Yes, the dungeon master is the storyteller, but the ones who progress the story and change the story are the players. My world that you guys are in has changed so much because of actions of players, and that I have had to adapt the world because of knuckleheaded things that they have done. I
Mhm.
mean, it's a wonderful thing. It makes the story super interesting. Um, but I have to agree with you on a couple of points. One, when you're building a world, just start with a small town. You know,
Mhm.
that has a couple of NPCs that they can go to and talk to, and then as they do what they're going to do, um, build it around it. Kind of build the world as the players grow. Not everybody has a world that they've been working on since they were 13 years old, like myself. This world has been around forever for me, so I know the ins and outs of it. Like Mystara for you, your Mystara has been around since you first started playing.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a quick question I wanted to ask you. When you're actually running a game, do you prefer to have your own setting, like your Mystara setting, or like some of the Wizards of the Coast adventure books or the Green Ronin adventure books?
No, I like to get the hold of those and read them just to get the ideas out of them, but I prefer to do my own stories. Prefer to do my own and like I said, I do use the Mystara just because it makes it easier. I don't have to create a whole lot of things. I will have to every now and then create a random town, uh, and then every now and then I do need to create some NPCs uh, that are my own. But you know,
So let's touch on some other of the formats that are out there that you can world build around. I know one in particular that you're very fond of is Savage Worlds.
right? That's a very good uh,
I have
dice system is a really
I
good system.
I have a hard time with it because the D20 is so ingrained in me. It's
Mm-hmm.
such, and for a lot of tabletop players, it's such an ingrained mechanic that our brains don't necessarily, well, mine in particular doesn't don't necessarily register. Well, why aren't I rolling my D20 to strike this creature? Why am I rolling 17,000 D6s? What is going on here? So, but there, but there is one mechanic of that system that I did enjoy, which is it allows for a lot of narrative storytelling
Yes.
in that system. So tell me a little bit about that system because you've got a lot more experience with that. You've ran lots of games in that system.
Well, it you basically have with your stats, you have a die attributed to your stats, and then with your skills, there's a dice attributed to your stats. And the bigger the dice, the better you are at those things. And basically, everything is called a trait roll. Your stats are traits, your skills are traits. And so when you're making a trait roll, you use the die type that is associated with that. Uh, it's just it. And for example, you know, you have a strength of die 8. If you're trying to move something, you're going to roll a die 8 to see if you're successful. A 4 is a success. But then
That
there are also modifiers involved. Uh, if it's a extremely heavy thing, you might have to, you know, add a minus to it, like a -2 or something to that effect. Then, of course, in the event of combat, if you're doing melee combat, you have to subtract their uh, agility die to see if you hit. And then if you're doing ranged, range is just a straight one unless you're in a point blank range, and then the agility applies again. And
well,
then once you've hit, you have to compare your hit to their toughness to see whether you actually damaged them. You can hit somebody and still not damage them.
but one thing that stood out for me in that game system is that it you can manipulate that system because forgive me, but it's a simple die system.
Right.
There's not a lot of things that you have to do that are specific to a setting. For an example, you can have all those die rolls and you can put that in a Renaissance period. You can put it in the Old West. You can put it in the modern era. You can put it in a fantasy setting. You can put it in a horror setting, and you don't have to really change or adapt a whole lot. Just the names of skills
Mm-hmm.
necessarily, and I think that makes that a very versatile system, as opposed to the fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons rules. You can do a lot of stuff with that, but it's a little bit more complicated having had to adapt it to a modern setting like I've had to with our supernatural game.
Right.
But um, have you ever used that system to create your own world with?
Well, no, I've never got to play it. I did mess around with it a little bit, trying to create my own setting, but I never actually got to play that setting. I just kind of messed around with it just to see what it would look like. Uh, the only time I've ever actually got to play it, that we did it that one time back when we were at the game store, and then there's used to do it at cons quite a bit. But
Are
now
there
that's
are there any other systems that you enjoy using? Like I enjoy the Palladium system or Palladium, however you want to pronounce it. It's really up to you. I enjoy that system. It's a broken system. You can break the game with if you
mhm,
build your characters the right way. Um, but I enjoy it because of the realism in it. Because of the types of skill checks that you have to make, and it's not just beat an armor or take damage or whatever the case may be. There's several different layers of damage and stuff. Is there another system out there that you enjoy? playing that you enjoy getting your hands in besides the Savage Worlds?
There is it was a game called Toon. You used two die six, and it was similar to the percentile dice. You basically rolled two die six, and it was an 11 to a 66 was your range. Uh, like I said, it's different, but it's also a pretty simple system. But you basically take the role of a cartoon in a cartoon world, and you get to do cartoon type tricks, and you don't actually die. You just what they refer to as fall down, which is basically what happens in cartoons, and it's kind of based more on like the old Looney Tune type stuff, Roadrunner,
Sure.
Coyote type thing. Uh, and I really enjoyed that system. They came out with a source book, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of the source book now, but it had rules where you could play a Call of Cthulhu type game in a tune setting, or a Star Trek type game in a tune setting. Uh, there was one where you played the old Godzilla type movies
Oh
in
wow.
a cartoon setting. I mean, it was just a lot of really cool stuff. There was also a fantasy one, uh, like a Dungeons and Dragons type, using those rules, and but there was a lot of versatility to it. It was just like I said, simple system, but I really liked playing it, and I really liked the idea of playing a cartoon character in different types of things. I actually got to play a baby hippo that had a diaper that he just kept pulling stuff out of. If he needed it, he reached into his diaper. There it was. I mean, it was just I had a blast with that one. Uh,
That sounds entertaining. That's called Toon, Toon.
Tune, yes.
That's
I don't even
fascinating.
know if it's in print anymore, but it was a really cool game. I enjoyed it a lot.
There are a ton of good game systems out there.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do, if fifth edition is not your cup of tea, dig into something else. Find something else that's easier for you to get or easier for you to run. That doesn't overwhelm you. The most important thing about playing these games is you have to have fun. That's the whole point. The whole reason why we do these is so we can have fun, to have a little escapism, give ourselves a little bit of a boon socially. There's if you're not having fun, don't do it. I mean, don't play it. It's real easy. The next thing I want to talk to you a little bit about, and it's something that I love doing, and I can't help it because I'm a writer like you're a writer. Um, I love building NPCs. I like
Yes.
creating the backstories and the things. What is the first thing that you look at when you create an NPC? What do you look for?
Well, the one of the primary things is what exactly is this guy after? What is his primary goal? Because I mean, even if your NPC is an ally, there's a reason why he's your ally. There's
What's
got
his
to be a driving force that says, why is this guy helping you out? Or why is this guy out to kill you? There's always got to be that driving force. And that's always what I kind of look at. Uh, what I generally like to do with NPCs, especially an NPC that's got character class levels, is I start from the very beginning when I start building him. I go up first level, then I say, okay, when he went to second level, why did he make this choice? Then I go to third level. Why did he make this choice? As a DM, you're always going to know more about your NPCs than your characters ever will.
Yep.
You're going to know more about their motivations. You're going to know more. But no,
Yeah.
don't just pull something out of the DMG and throw it at them
Yep.
because, or rather, the monster manual and throw it at them. Don't just pick something. Know why your villains are the way they are.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to pull a vampire out of the monster manual and throw it at him. But it makes the game better if you explain why this thing's a vampire. How did he become a vampire? How long has he been a vampire? Uh, what is he? What is his goal now that he is one? I mean, generally, if you're a vampire, you've kind of got basically three things. You're either going to go after power, you're going to go after love, or you're just going to be hungry and try to feed. Those are generally the motivations of a vampire. That's it.
I
Which one is your vampire?
I find when I'm building an NPC that the numbers and the statistics and things of that nature are secondary. I think a padding of backstory, history, motivations, things like that are what. And and now look, you may build a fantastically cool NPC or a fantastically cool villain, and the players kill him, or the players never meet him.
Right.
or the players befriend them when you didn't expect them to. Sometimes a standard bad guy, for an example, a goblin, is just a goblin until he meets your players, and the next thing you know, they're either their arch nemesis or their best friend because something has happened. So
Right.
I find that creating a thick, warm bed of backstory for an NPC helps me to, like you were talking about, makes helps me to make the decisions for that character to do what they did, make the decisions that they made. Um, so now that we've got the NPC stuff out of the way, um, what do you like to do when it comes to encounters? What are your favorite encounters that you like to
Okay.
do?
Well, can I just do one more thing with NPCs before we go to
Absolutely,
that? Uh,
absolutely.
any player character that you have that you are no longer playing, keep it. You never know when you've got to pull someone out quick. I like to keep a nice little one of those brown manila folders full of my old NPCs that I don't use anymore because you never know when you're going to have something quick, and
Yep.
that makes it so much quicker because you've already got it there, and it's real easy to twist something that you've turned into that was a hero and twist it and make it the exact opposite, and now it's a villain. Uh, and just to give you an idea, earlier Dave was saying to watch The Boys, that show. Uh, it's basically a superhero show that asks the question, what if Superman was a narcissist? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just basically you just twist the character to make it the villain instead of the hero now. But hold on to things like that because there you have stats, you've kind of got background, you've kind of got an idea, you just turn it to where basically instead of going down the road of hero, he went down the road of villain instead, something was different. And it's a really quick and easy way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Now,
I do
moving
the
on
same.
to encounters.
I do the same thing with my old PCs. If I know I'm not going to play them again, but they're still alive, I will stash them away, and the next thing you know, they're out either playing with the characters or against them. But go ahead with the encounters. I'm sorry.
Okay, so anyway, it depends on the game. It really does. It depends on my players. If my players don't seem to be enjoying a whole lot of combat, they prefer types of role playing. Uh, I want to put them in a setting where there's more types of role playing, social settings, settings where there's like a ballroom. Uh, One of probably my favorite games ever was in a big. They were having a big ball that evening, and several different things occurred during the ball where NPCs were coming in. There were people in the background trying to rob the people that were staying at this inn that were at this big ball. Just an assassination attempt at the ball. I mean, there was all kinds of different things going on in the background, and all of these villains that were there and all of these different things that were interacting didn't know that the other ones were there too. It was basically, and the player characters, and they didn't have all the encounters. I had probably 30 different encounters at that ball, and they probably hit 18 of the 30
Oh wow.
through the course of the night. I didn't need all of them, but they were there and they were going on. And they were actually hired to do kind of like a security thing for the ball to make sure nothing out of the way happened. And they made a lot of good contacts because that they were there and because they saved someone from being assassinated. So now there's this political leader that they've got a favor from and things like that. I also like to do like a puzzle type thing. Uh, if they're not, like I said, if they're not really into combat, but they're the type of players that try to solve puzzles if you put before them, uh, creating a scenario where they have to solve the puzzle to get out, putting them like in a prison dimension, and the only way they can get out is if they solve the puzzle.
One
Uh,
thing
Things
that I
like
find
that.
that adds to that is a time limit. Putting the
Mm-hmm.
players under a time limit to solve a puzzle. It adds an extra layer of stress, and you'll see how quick when they're pressured like that and there's not really a combat involved, that players will become frantic and they'll get the flop sweats, and it's a fun encounter to run. One thing that to add on to what you said about the ball, it's always important if you have a world that you've created that you keep it persistent. And what I mean by that is, yes, these things are going on. The players are focusing on these things, but it's a living world, and so
Right.
there's other things around them that may be happening that if they had had a chance to see it or do it or find it, they could have prevented, stopped, helped, whatever the case may be. But if they're not there, then those actions that those NPCs have and those encounters those NPCs keep going. And so you kind of need to have a an idea what would happen if those NPCs did steal that magic item from that back room in that ballroom or whatever the case may be. What then would have happened? And then build on for maybe an encounter later on or something
Right.
that drastically affects the story going forward. I find that also players love that aha moment when something happens and they're like, oh, that's
Right.
what that meant. I feel that they enjoy that kind of stuff. They enjoy feeling like they accomplished or solved a problem. Um, also, when you do combat encounters, do you prefer to make them challenging or easy or right in the middle? What is your favorite combat encounter?
I try to make them harder, although generally I equip the characters to the point that even if I'm making them harder, they still seem to tear them to pieces. Uh, just for an example, one of the games we recently played, I have made the mistake of giving a monk boots of haste, and he moved through an encounter, a combat encounter, basically dropping four creatures on his turn with his two attacks, and then the flurry of blows. He was in and out like it was nothing. Uh,
I don't know
so
who
I
would have
mean,
done
it's
that.
I have to plan now for things like that. Uh,
So you enjoy making the conflict a little challenging, right? You don't want to make it too
well,
easy
I
on the
want to
players.
make it challenging, but it never seems to be challenging.
I have a tendency to find that I like to challenge my players quite a bit, and you're a player as well of one in my campaign, and I do like to challenge you guys. I like for you guys to reach down and and do things creatively and find things that maybe you didn't know you could do, and do it. I mean, it's fun to watch your players have guts and reach down in there and use that intestinal fortitude to vanquish an enemy. Sometimes they don't know when to be quiet and they keep antagonizing the enemy and they get a finger to the death to the forehead, things like that. But I also with that same thing, you want to remind these guys, these players, I do anyway, that they're still heroes. They're still above what the ordinary person is in these worlds. And so when I do an encounter like that later on down the road, just to let because sometimes if you continuously bash a player the players over and over and over again, they feel underpowered. You need to at some point in time to put them against something that they can completely crush, that they can completely just decimate, so they can feel that they are powerful and they are these strong characters that are the heroes of the realm. But that's the reason why they're facing these challenging things because no one else can do it. Like for an example, you come across a tribe of goblins who are harassing a farm family and they're levels 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. They're going to make mincemeat of those goblins, but that gives them that chance of one feeling like a hero. They went in, they saved his family. Two, they feel like they're invulnerable because they've gone in and they've decimated these horrible goblin creatures, and there they are, basically untouched, and they have that sense of self esteem by going through those encounters. A lot of people may not think that you have to think that hard about running these games, but you do because morale of your players can make a game fun or not fun. If your players feel like they're always going to lose every encounter that they're in, that they're always going to be over challenged by the dungeon master, it's not fun for them. So it's always good, one, to make your encounters beatable. There's always a way out of every encounter.
right.
Um, and then make your encounters vary in difficulty because you don't always want to beat your players into the ground. Sometimes your players need it. Sometimes they get too arrogant and too cocky and they run around destroying everything that you need to remind them, yes, you are tough and you are super great, but there are things tougher and more super great than you are. So I think designing your encounters and combat encounters in that way is important. Um, Now, when it comes to like vomiting lore or what is it called when they have a speech in a movie or it's like starts with an
Exposition.
exposition. Uh, when it comes to exposition about important lore that the characters need to know, how do you like to handle that kind of stuff? Do you like to handle it like with books that they pick up and they read, or through some kind of speech?
Well, I mean, it like I said, it depends on the game and the players a lot of times. Uh, if they're going to be going into settings, social settings where they're going to meeting people and talking to people on a regular basis, yeah, I like to have them, discuss things with a PC. If they're more going to stay on the outskirts, throwing a book at them or dream, that's always a good medium.
I use
Sending them a
that.
dream
I use that
uh,
quite
to,
a bit.
to move the story along. Uh, there's all types of things like that you can do, but it really depends on what your players are doing and what kind of game they're playing, because you'll have one group of people that this is all they want to do, and then you'll have another group of players that have an entirely different outlook. I mean, I have had games where I've played with younger players, and all they wanted to do is what we like to refer to as that murder hobo
Yeah.
kind of mentality. They just wanted to fight and kill and grab the treasure. They weren't that interested in the role playing part of it. They were just interested in
The
the
video game part
mechanics
of
of
it.
the game.
The video
Uh,
game part of it.
yes, and in fourth edition, I saw a lot of that. I don't know if you guys ever played the fourth edition,
I
but
think I think Nexodon played the fourth edition. I never touched it.
it
It
was
was
a
horrible.
lot. It was designed very much like an MMO game. It really was.
Yeah, this looked like it took
But
WoW and made it into a Dungeon Dragons game.
I mean, it was. I still enjoyed playing it. It still had a lot of cool aspects that were fun to play. It's just it was that kind of a video game mentality, and I saw a lot of that in that when that was going on. That was when I first got involved with RPGA, and it was the LFR Living Forgotten Realms back then, uh, and that was probably where I played most of the fourth edition that I played was in that setting, and that's what you saw a lot of was just the kind of the murder hobo aspect. They didn't do a whole lot of role playing, and that's probably one of my biggest faults with the RPGA stuff is there is a lot less of the role playing. It's more of the combat and then the skill type challenges, and not a lot of role playing. It doesn't really leave for a lot of role playing. Uh, where
It,
homebrew, you can make it entirely role playing if you want to.
to
Uh,
me, the RPGA, now it's a great system to go and get to know new people and get to see what the WotC and all those groups of manufacturers are developing and things of that nature. But to me, as a dungeon master, a lot of the modules and a lot of the I don't even know if they call them modules anymore, but a lot of the adventures and the big books, campaign settings take a lot of the if you follow it verbatim and every word in those books, it feels like they take a lot of the creativity away from the dungeon master,
right,
and and a lot of players don't care. They don't care about how it affects the dungeon masters. A lot of the dungeon masters don't care because they don't want to be that creative. They want to run this game so they can get whatever points they can get to do whatever they want to do.
right.
Um, but a couple of things that to touch on here, we're getting close on time, but uh, some advice that you might give a brand new dungeon master who's running his table for the first time. What's some encouraging words that you might give them? It doesn't necessarily have to be technical or anything like that. Just what's mistakes or things that you've experienced throughout your time that might aid them as they go forward.
The best and most important advice I can ever to give you is to remember this is a role playing game, not a rule playing game. If a rule isn't working for you or your campaign, get rid of it. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you and your players are having fun. If you're not having fun, why are you doing this? That's the most important thing. Have fun with what you're doing. That's the best thing that I can tell you. And pay attention to what your players are doing, what they like to do, and then work with them toward what they like to do. If they enjoy doing certain things, try to make that more part of your game. They're going to enjoy the game more if you're doing what they like to do.
The finishing note here. I'll throw a little bit of my advice out there as well, if people want to listen. Um, know your players. Know the table that you're DMing. Know if you have somebody at your table who is aggressive and antagonistic towards you or the other players, and it makes for an unfun environment. It's your job as the referee of the table. That's what the dungeon master is. It's your job to approach that player and either ask them to tone it back or adjust their behavior or ask them to leave the table. I know it's very uncomfortable. It's a type of leadership that you have to learn to grab by. If you want to be a dungeon master, you have to be a leader of some sort. So it's important that you know your table. You know that what makes it fun for those players, and you're gonna have. I have a very eclectic group of players. Some like to do the combat, some like to rule lawyer, some like to role play, some like to dig into lore. I mean, I have a very eclectic table. It makes it fun, but it's also by the time I'm done dungeon mastering for these knuckleheads, I am exhausted. So remember, do it as long as you can. If you feel that bit of burnout happening, because it happens to all of us, every dungeon master who has to dungeon master for a long period of time has that sense of burnout. But on that note, remember, it's all about having fun and having a good time. And I would like to thank Dave for moderating. Uh, I'll be right back, little guy. I will like to thank Dave for moderating this interview, and thank you, Johnny. You did a wonderful job. Thank you for coming and talking to me about world building. I may ask you about players and playing Dungeons and Dragons in general on another time, but for right now, I think hopefully somebody finds the advice that we gave them and can step forward and have the courage to be a dungeon master because it's a scary thing when you're doing it for the first time.
Yes.
But again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Dave. I hope all of y'all stay safe and remember to take care of each other. We've only got one life to live, and it's best to spend it with people that you care about. And remember to have fun. Ta ta for now.
See you guys.